Weaponized ambiguity. We hear this phrase very often. We hear Rome and even Vatican II being accused of engaging in weaponized ambiguity. But there is a new kind of weaponized ambiguity on the scene, and that is people who are not clear on the question of whether or not they believe Pope Francis is the Pope, though they present themselves as Catholics. Is that what is perhaps going on here? In the case of Bishop Strickland, I don't know, and therefore I am seeking for clarity from Bishop Strickland. Bishop Strickland, is Pope Francis the Pope? Yes or no? In a moment, I'm going to show why I'm asking this question, and I think it is a legitimate question. But I believe that Bishop Strickland's donors, patrons, the parishes that invite him to speak, the conferences that invite him to speak, the groups that invite him to speak in their circles, they are entitled to know a yes or a no to this question, because he is brought to Catholic parishes, conference, and groups as a Catholic. He's being presented as a Catholic. And so people are entitled to know if he is in communion with the Holy Father, Pope Francis, or not. It's a fair question. And so that is something that I want to explore today, and then also challenge Bishop Strickland to come out and very clearly state what his current position is on this subject. The reason why is we continue to see him daily now sharing not only material from Sedevacantists who believe that Francis isn't the Pope, but sharing videos that teach that Francis isn't the Pope. And you know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of, certain Jesuit priests, high-profile Jesuit priests, who say, hey, you know what? I'm not rejecting the church's teaching on same-sex acts, but then their Twitter and their social media is full of them sharing material rejecting the church's teaching. But they always have this deniability, and they could say, but, I didn't deny the church's teaching. But you share the material constantly. It would be as if I were to say, you know what, guys, I'm against abortion, but all I do is share material all day long promoting the goodness of abortion. At some point, it would be legitimate for people to ask, Michael, are you in favor of abortion or something? You need to be very clear here. And I think that Bishop Strickland needs to come out and state clearly what his position is in light of the fact that he is putting his own position into question. He is the one doing that, not anybody else. Let me give you an example, and then let's explore actually multiple examples. Sharing my screen, you should be able to see something that he just shared on Twitter. Another Sedevacantist shares Bishop Gracida's video. And in the video, Bishop Gracida is explicitly saying that Francis isn't the Pope. So it's not like, well, everything in the video is good, but, in another video, he denies that Francis is the Pope. No, he's every day at this point, effectively, sharing Sedevacantist material. And the videos that he shares and the stuff that he's sharing explicitly rejects Pope Francis as the Pope. And so his patrons are entitled to know whether or not he is still in communion with Pope Francis, because that would indicate whether or not he's still in communion with the Catholic Church or not. Here he says, sharing Nothing to Hide, interviewed Bishop Gracida, who of course is a retired bishop in Texas, 101, America's Pilot Prophet, shares this video. Let me give you a snippet of this video where you can clearly see in the video that Strickland is sharing that Pope Francis isn't the Pope. Watch this. And let me make sure that you can hear the audio. Okay.
You got to be honest and courageous in proclaiming the truth, even though it hurts. But you get attacked, you criticize, and especially from the present Pope. what's his name?
Francis.
Francis. He is so terrible. He's not Pope. He's not really Pope, but he's just a pretend imposter occupying a Pope. Terrible.
So he's an imposter occupying the See of St. Peter, is what he's saying. Basically, a usurper. He's pretending to be the Pope, but he isn't the Pope. This isn't new for Bishop Gracida. He's maintained this position for years, as well as many other wild and wacky stuff. But for some odd reason, again, Bishop Strickland wants to share this video, and there's always that plausibility, that deniability of, well, no, I'm only sharing that one part of the video, the other stuff I don't really agree with. But okay, when we're constantly doing this, it raises the question, do you or do you not think that Pope Francis is the Pope, and especially in light of what we see Bishop Strickland saying elsewhere, which I'll demonstrate here in a moment. Now, you remember I covered this not long ago, once again sharing another video from the Divine Mercy Mission, where they have these fake prophecies that they're claiming come from, that they claim comes from God the Father and Jesus and also the Virgin Mary. And it's all kinds of wacky, wild stuff. I'm not going to go into that in any detail here since I've already covered it elsewhere. But here, he's sharing that material. And when you go to it, what are they doing? Well, in these fake prophecies, they're saying Pope Francis isn't the Pope. Here's another one that Strickland just shared a few days ago.
How much I love you, sons and daughters of my heart. I see your suffering and humiliation. I see the confusion that surrounds my church. I see the betrayal you have suffered, and that soon all my children will suffer. For the betrayer sits on another's throne and will cast all who do not follow him aside.
The betrayer sits on another's throne. And this is not the first time this community has offered fake apparitions claiming that Pope Francis isn't the Pope. This is just the most recent example, and Bishop Strickland shares it without coming out and saying, hey, you know what, I don't agree with this part, but here's the other stuff that I agree with. Meanwhile, at the same time as he's sharing this stuff, he posts this on his Substack. Now, I reviewed the entire thing in depth in a show about a couple days ago, and I refuted all of the errors in it. So I'm not going to reproduce that here, but I'm pointing to where he is starting to hint at to his audience, starting to get them ready for the view that, you know what, maybe Francis isn't the Pope. He says, also, just as we should be aware of the warnings we have been given about a counter church that will have been emptied of its divine content and over which the Antichrist will preside, we must also be aware of the possibility that at some point God may permit that an impostor might sit upon the chair of Peter. Protestantism, 100%. This is the Protestant thesis of the Reformers. This is not Catholic. But you see, he's toying around with this stuff, but still beating around the bush. Well, Bishop Strickland, do you think that that's the case now? Do you think that there's an imposter now? You continue to share people and videos that say that Pope Francis is an imposter. Let me give you another example. This was before he was relieved from ministry. I was sounding the alarm and saying, guys, pay attention. Listen to what Strickland is saying. At the Rome Life Forum in 2023, he starts reading a letter from his friend that he really praises. He praises his friend, this faithful man, and his friend in this letter that he presents to the audience is clearly saying that Pope Francis isn't the Pope. And Strickland tried to walk it back after he got enough pressure from people and tried to say, well, you know, when the guy in the letter calls Pope Francis a usurper, I just felt that he was just saying that, you know, he's abusing his power. All right, well, that excuse doesn't work anymore because the other people that he continues to share aren't just saying that Francis is abusing his power. They're saying Francis isn't the Pope at all. So that excuse ran out of gas. But listen to this. With no rebuke, with no disagreement of what he presents in the letter, this is what he shares at the Rome Life Forum.
But this friend speaks out of love for Pope Francis, for the church. And we, I believe, all have to do the same, but face the challenges that you will hear. So this letter simply begins, Francis is an expert at producing cowards. By preaching dialogue and openness and a welcoming spirit, and by highlighting always his own authority, he makes it seem that one who opposes him and what he proposes is an enemy of the church. And yet is it not the blood of the cowards, yet it is not the blood of the cowards that is the seed of the church. It is the blood of the martyrs. And Rome has been literally consecrated by the blood of Christians. As Tertullian wrote, we multiply when you reap us. The blood of Christians is seed. Again, my friend, speaking to me, but I believe to all of us, you cannot, indeed you must not, go to Rome and play nicely. The Queen of Martyrs has called you, and you cannot parcel out truth in pieces. After all, were we not told that the truth would set us free? The Synod has gathered cowards in Rome, those who not only refuse to die for our Lord and his church, but indeed demand that his eternal truths be changed. And if you play nicely with these, then you mock the martyrs. And although playing nicely might ensure you are not removed, I again quote Tertullian. The usual complaint is, I have no other way of earning a living. The harsh reply can be, do you have to live? I ask you, Bishop, do you have to live? In fact, should you live when you have been called to die? It is easy to assert that no real damage has been done by the Synod, but it has done untold damage in attempting to cheapen what Christ proclaimed was worth his life, and for which he indeed shed his precious blood. Would you now allow this one who has pushed aside the true Pope and has attempted to sit on a chair that is not his?
Remember that? You remember that? This was before Benedict passed away, who has put aside the true Pope. You hear that? I'm playing the full thing because some people operating under a mentality of delusion, like Brian Holdsworth, have come into my chat accusing me of taking Strickland out of context. I'm not taking him out of context. You listen to the whole thing, it's even worse. Now, so I'm playing the whole thing so nobody can accuse me of taking this out of context.
Define what the church is to be. As for the beast that was and is not, it is an eighth, but it belongs to the seventh, and it goes to destruction. You're probably smarter than I am. I'm not sure what that last part's talking about.
How sad that he doesn't know what Scripture is talking about. It's saying that Pope Francis is part of the Antichrist regime, a theme that now Bishop Strickland is hinting at in his own blog. Surprise, surprise.
And I didn't have the chance to ask. Christ has proclaimed the sanctity of life. It cannot be otherwise than sanctified because he has created it and he has died for it. And yet this usurper of Peter's chair has counted life as naught.
usurper of Peter's chair. So when Strickland tried to walk this back after everyone, started sounding the alarm, and he tried to say, well, I just thought he was just saying that, he's a usurper insofar as he's abusing his power. Yeah, no, that's not what he said, Bishop Strickland. It's pretty clear. You just read it. Usurper of Peter's throne. Not abusing his power, usurper of Peter's throne. And so, okay, I said, I don't know if that really gets him out of this one, but all right, we'll go with it. Tried to give him the benefit of the doubt. But since then, what has he presented to us? Nothing but more and more and more material that is Sedevacantist in nature, and even starts to hint at it in his own writing, assuming that some ghostwriter didn't actually write this for him. But even if they did, he puts his name on it. So I have to say that this backs up his own thought, even if he had a ghostwriter. I'll put a link to that in the show notes. You're welcome to go and watch the rest of it. But he doesn't ever, say, hey, I don't agree with this stuff. No, he just says this is tough words. But he presents this to the audience as something that is beneficial for them. And like I said, when he tried to walk it back, I said, yeah, that excuse isn't working. It's not getting him out of the predicament here. But I said, okay, we'll just go ahead and just see what he says next. And what he has said next in the months that have followed has shown that he is going down the path of Sedevacantism. I don't know if he's there yet, but it is a fair question to now ask. Is Francis the Pope, yes or no? Bishop Strickland needs to answer this question. We saw again, he's going on this pilgrimage, leading a pilgrimage with Patrick Coffin, also Sedevacantist. And we've seen Bishop Strickland call out weaponized ambiguity on Rome's part. And I want to say, with all due respect, Bishop Strickland, the only way that you can avoid that same accusation of engaging in weaponized ambiguity is to come out and clearly answer the question, is Francis the Pope or not, in your estimation? If you continue to dodge this question while sharing material that is Sedevacantist, but you don't tell people yes or no, yay or nay, you don't let your yes be yes and your no be no, you're engaging in the same kind of weaponized ambiguity that you accuse Rome of, and therefore you're no better by your own admission. Now, I also want to show something here. This was a while back in 2019, when we saw a very different Bishop Strickland. This was the Bishop Strickland who unfortunately shared Vatican Catholic's material, very well-known Sedevacantist website. I assume he didn't really know that he was sharing their material. He says a great resource, and it's all Most Holy Family Monastery's material, which is far from a great resource. But he comes out with an apology not long after that. I apologize to anyone who are concerned with my mistaken retweet of an anti-Catholic post. I did not read it closely, and it fooled me. Well, honestly, this summarizes Bishop Strickland as a whole. He doesn't really look into things, and he endorses and shares material that he really shouldn't be. So I think that this is actually indicative of him and his disposition as a whole. He's very easily fooled. I pledge to learn from my mistake, which he hasn't. I will fast and pray in reparation for any harm done. Okay. So at the time, he's saying, hey, this is anti-Catholic material. In reality, the kind of stuff that he is saying now on his own blog and the kind of stuff he is sharing is of the same level, substantially no different than what Most Holy Family Monastery is known for producing. It's in the same genre, same category, just as wild, just as wacky, just as dissenting in nature. So back in 2019, he describes this as anti-Catholic material. But now he's effectively sharing material that's kind of in that ballpark, which according to his own description would be an anti-Catholic position. So I think it is fair to ask, has he changed his position? If he has, that's fine. I've certainly changed my position on a number of things. Everybody is perfectly entitled to change their perspective and change their mind on something. I'm not knocking that, but be candid. Be open with people about that. Because again, Catholics are inviting Bishop Strickland to parishes, conference, groups to speak as a Catholic figure. And if he does not hold that Francis is the Pope, he's no longer in communion with Pope Francis or the Catholic Church, and his donors, his patrons, the people who have him there to speak at their parishes and conferences, they're entitled to know that. Now, if they want to support somebody who says openly, hey, I don't believe Francis is the Pope, okay, that's on them. But at least for full disclosure, tell that to people. Now, again, is Francis the Pope or not? Bishop Strickland and many others at this point need to answer that question, but especially Bishop Strickland. Now, if not, then I believe he needs to state so. Again, just so people know where he is at. Again, if they want to support that at that point, you know, they're doing so with full knowledge of what his position is. No more ambiguity, no more weaponized ambiguity. They know where he stands. That's on them. But if Bishop Strickland believes that Pope Francis is the Pope, if the answer is yes, he is the Pope, then why continue to share this Sedevacantist material? And why continue to share material that explicitly rejects Pope Francis as the Pope? It's really no different than some of your Jesuit priests out there. Not all Jesuits are bad, by the way. Shout out to Father Brown. He's a great Jesuit. But some Jesuits out there weaponize some articles that they share, and they play this ambiguity game. Oh no, I don't deny church teaching. Meanwhile, sharing content excessively that denies church teaching. Father Brown in the chat. Not all Jesuits are bad. There's some good Jesuits. But there's some out there that play this little game. And we rightly criticize it when they do that. But wait, when somebody on the other end of the spectrum plays this little game of weaponized ambiguity, everyone wants to be quiet. No. And you don't get to call out weaponized ambiguity from the Vatican when you yourself engage in it. So come out and state clearly what the answer is. If he's the Pope, why are you sharing this material? Surely there's other stuff out there from people who aren't Sedevacantists that you could share. I think it's pretty clear why these videos are being shared. And again, if Francis isn't the Pope, come out and say that. I have zero respect for people who hide in the shadows. Again, they throw rocks and hide their hands. I have no respect for that. Come out and tell your patrons what you believe. Now, hopefully, he believes that Pope Francis is the Pope. I hope so. But that then starts a number of issues, because one really has to wonder, well, why are you sharing this stuff? And why are you saying this stuff? And if he's not the Pope, okay, if he thinks Francis isn't the Pope, by definition, he's no longer Catholic. He's outside of communion with the Catholic Church, and Catholic parishes, Catholic conferences, Catholic donors need to be aware of that. They're entitled to that information. I had somebody on social media operating, again, under this delusional mentality, thinking, oh, well, he doesn't owe anyone an answer. Yes, he does. That's like me presenting myself to everyone here on Reason and Theology as a Catholic, taking money from donors who are supporting me as a Catholic, but privately I'm a Muslim. It's dishonest. So let your yes be yes and no be no. And yes, people are entitled to an answer. So I would appreciate hearing an answer, not only from him, but anybody else who's playing footsie with Sedevacantism like this these days. And believe me, there's a lot of them out there. Anyways, I hope this has given you some food for thought. If we don't hear a response from Bishop Strickland, you already know what it is. You already know why you're not hearing a response. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. Of course, check me out, patreon.com/reason and theology. If you want to support a Catholic who actually is Catholic and is in communion with Pope Francis, I'll tell you very clearly what my position is. If you want to support that, definitely check out reasonandtheology.locals.com or patreon.com/reason and theology. See you later. God bless. Hey friends, do you want others to discover why the Catholic Church is the church that Jesus established? And do you want to help people make sense of all the confusion in the Catholic Church today? Help contribute to this mission by supporting Reason and Theology at patreon.com/Reason and Theology. By doing so, you'll also get access to exclusive content for patrons only. Also, if you want to deepen your faith, there are free ebooks and even courses that you can sign up for by visiting reason.podia.com. Hey friends, are you thinking about converting to Eastern Orthodoxy? If so, I have the book just for you. It's called Answering Orthodoxy. In this book, I engage all of the objections that Eastern Orthodox have against the Catholic Church. I respond to all of them, refute them, and I show why the Catholic Church alone possesses the fullness of the faith. Get your copy today at shop.catholic.com.